Always an angel, never a god, am I right? Hi, hello, how are you? If you're new to my channel, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Alex. Welcome. And if you're coming back, we're best friends now. You already know how this goes. I hope you're doing well, and if not, totally get that, and I hope tomorrow is better. So, after boygenius announced their debut album, I read this article of all the books that each individual member recommended at different times, as well as an article of their little book club that they have together, which is so cute. And after reading those articles, I was like, boy, I have a genius idea. Why don't I read a recommendation from each individual member as well as a recommendation from the group collectively? Because they look like they have excellent taste, and I have read a few of the books that they recommended already, and they are great. So from Julian, I'm going to be reading Incendiaries by R.O. Kwon. And then from Lucy, I'll be reading The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. From Phoebe, I'll be reading The Idiot by Elif Botman. And from boygenius, I'll be reading Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I'm really excited about this. I have a bunch of library books on hold. Actually, I have to pick up a couple already. And I did start Night Bitch last night. So I think working mother is perhaps the most nonsensical concept ever concocted. I mean, who isn't a working mother? And then add a paid job to it, so what are you then? A working mother? Imagine saying working father. But couldn't he see how much she struggled? Was he capable of acknowledging all she did? He made it seem as though she was on an extended holiday. If he could not offer his actual hands-on help, at the very least he could offer his gratitude with a shower of thank yous every waking moment he was home. Instead, when she tried to bring up the division of labor, the invisible labor of her life, the psychic load, he would offer something like, "I suppose the money I make means nothing." And of course, that wasn't what she was saying. Not at all. I've been disappointed, y'all. I just finished the first book, and I'm unimpressed, to be honest. So the first book that I set out to read for this challenge was Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. To be honest, I had high hopes for this. I've heard a lot of good things on Instagram. A couple of people I know have read it and enjoyed it. It has a lot of themes about motherhood and the way that society has failed mothers as a group of people. But this was so boring. So this is the boygenius book club choice. So it's like a collective recommendation. And to be fair, they didn't actually technically recommend it. They only mentioned it in an article where a couple of the books that they read and discussed together were stated. So who knows? Maybe they hated this book and I just chose wrong. But it is what it is. It's a book that I had. I was supposed to read it for Trick or TBR 1,000 years ago, and I never got around to it. Like I said, there was interesting aspects to it with regards to the theme. And I think the purpose of the story. However, I feel like this is a classic example of love the idea, didn't love the execution, like at all. It dragged on a lot. This book is like, 300 pages? But truly, oh my god, it's only 240. But truly, I thought it could have been a short story. And it's an interesting concept because it's about a mother who essentially turns into a werewolf, also known as Night Bitch, because she is so frustrated by what she feels she needs to do to be a good mother, but also the pressure to be a good wife and the fact that her husband is like never there because he's always traveling for work. And he's, of course, the most tired of all of them. But yeah, it was just, I feel like this trope is starting to get overdone. This unhinged women trope. And I cannot believe I'm saying this. And I'm not the first to say this either. But I feel like Sally Rooney, she brought a storm with her writing, with her stories. And everyone ran with it. Everyone's like, okay, unhinged girlies, let's go. This is in now. Everyone's writing an unhinged girly book. But it's becoming overdone in a way that there could be new and unique stories. But people are kind of just following a recipe for the story. And I feel like this had so much potential and it fell really, really flat for me. Because I'm sorry, but I just don't care about some middle-aged white mom living in the suburbs and just complaining about people. Literally it every day just repeats itself. And maybe that's a theme in like the mundanity of life. But, you know, we as readers could have been told in a very different way. I'm just deeply disappointed. Additionally, there was an aspect that I saw coming, but once it happened, I was just really turned off by the novel. I just want to say she does become a vicious canine. So if animal death or blood and guts bother you, this is not the book for you. Also, if you like to read interesting books, this is not the book for you. Life is tragic simply because the earth turns and the sun inexorably rises and sets, and one day, for each of us, the sun will go down for the last time. Perhaps the whole root of our trouble, the human trouble, is that we sacrifice all the beauty of our lives, will imprison ourselves in totems, taboos, crosses, blood sacrifices, steeples, mosques, races, armies, flags, nations, in order to deny the fact of death, which is the only fact we have. I know that people can be better than they are. We are capable of bearing a great burden once we discover that the burden is reality and arrive where reality is. Anyway, the point here is that we are living in an age of revolution, whether we will or no, and that America is the only Western nation in both the power and, as I hope to suggest, the experience that may help to make these revolutions real and minimize the human damage. Any attempt we make to oppose these outbursts of energy is tantamount to signing our death warrant. All right, book 2 is done, and that's The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, which is Lucy's recommendation, and my goodness, that woman has a ginormous brain. So I picked this book from the list because I've been meaning to read James Baldwin for a really, really long time, and I didn't really know where to start. A lot of people have different opinions on where to start, so I figured, you know what, I trust Lucy's recommendation. She has good taste, and I was correct. She obviously has a lot more brain cells than me, which I mean, we kind of knew. They are boygenius after all. And there were a lot of really heavy and honestly complex themes throughout this. A lot about like grief and love and politics and race and the power dynamic during the Civil War era in Harlem, particularly for a Black man. And then there were a lot of criticisms, not only on politics, but also religion, specifically Christianity and Islam. And it was a really interesting perspective, especially knowing that Baldwin was a deeply religious man and he was raised in the church. So it's always interesting to have that perspective from someone that is so deep into that community, kind of, and understand their perspective, understand their criticisms, understand why they see things the way they see things. The writing was phenomenal. It's written as 2 letters, kind of, and he has such a direct way of saying things without losing the lyricism of his words, which I think is it takes quite a talented writer to be able to do that. I want to revisit this and take it in a little more slowly because I feel like I read it a little quickly, in particular because I was reading it for this video and also because it's a library book, so I do have to return it shortly. But I really want to reread it and take my time with it and go over certain parts over and over, because this is the kind of book that you really need to go over it with a pencil in your hand and consider the meaning behind each and every line, because all the words hold so much more than what you just see on the page. And this book is so much more than just like 150 pages or however many pages it is. Like, there's just a lot of depth to what he's saying. I really enjoyed reading his criticisms on like human nature, on the fragility of society, the politics behind power dynamics between races. He's a very interesting author, and I really look forward to reading more of his work. In the distance, an advertisement painted on the side of a brick building showed a young girl, lips pursed as if to send a wish. The suck and howl of a siren pierced the cold, and the fall wind smelled of reasons to live. People with no experience of God tend to think that leaving the faith would be a liberation, a flight from guilt, rules, but what I couldn't forget was the joy I'd known loving him. I realize there's no way for you guys to like properly see it, but I'm wearing my Julian Baker t-shirt. Okay, so if it wasn't evident by my t-shirt, I finished my Julian rec, and I actually really liked it. I went to go look at some reviews on Storygraph when I got about halfway through the book because I was curious what other people thought about it, and if people noticed specific themes that I was noticing while reading it. And I was really surprised to find out that this has a really low rating. It's like 3.2 stars or something like that. And even though I don't rate stuff anymore, like, I understand that for like a collective amount of reviews, like, that's fairly low. And so I went to go look at people's reviews and see what they rated it, and a lot of people would rate it 0 or 1 stars. And I don't know why. I guess I'm part of a minority because I enjoyed this book. I thought it was a very quick read. I truly tore through it, especially at the beginning, and I just thought it was a really interesting like dissection of cults and of religious cults specifically, and the fact that people who are desperate to have this like sense of belonging can get sucked into cults basically. And the characters, although they were not lovable, and I understand that's what a lot of people had issues with, I thought that was important to the story, and I still thought they were interesting characters. And I don't think a character needs to be lovable. I mean, sometimes the main character is a villain, right? So one of the most interesting themes for me was color, specifically the color blue. It's mentioned a lot of times in dialogue and description, and the way it's mentioned feels very pointed. It's very obvious. So I did a little bit of researching. In the Bible, the color blue is mentioned 49 times. And the meaning of the color blue is heaven. In this book, blue is mentioned 18 times. Now, 18 significance in the Bible is related to the meaning of bondage. And the word bondage is said 18 times in the Bible. In my opinion, that means that the color blue represents being locked in this thing that you think will bring you closer to heaven. And in the sense of this book, it's this cult. Now, 49 minus 18 is 31. Okay? Now bear with me. 31 AD was the year after Jesus Christ died, and the gospel was preached in Jerusalem. So that, like, one of the characters, he's basically like the second coming of Jesus, and in my opinion, there's a connection there. I don't know, Aro Kwan, if you're watching this, please confirm or deny, because maybe I'm just delusional, but I felt like kind of a genius for making those connections.
Intimacy is a place where there are no mistakes, at least not in the sense you feel. You don't just blow everything with one wrong move. A friendship is a space where you're supported and free to make mistakes. I think when you reach this understanding, a lot of things are going to feel better for you. I started to walk around the room, dazed with pain. I had no idea what to do with myself. I couldn't imagine how I was going to dispose of my body in space and time, every minute of every day, for the rest of my life. A whole ocean of rain seemed to be pouring out of the sky. We sat under an awning near a hotel parking lot and ate yellow plums. Within minutes, the sun was blazing, as if it didn't remember a thing.
Alright, ladies, the last book has been read. The Idiot, not the Russian one, the hot girl one, by Elif Botman. This was Phoebe's recommendation. She did not have a lot to pick from. Honestly, I think I was dreading this one the most because it was the longest. It's like just over 400 pages. But I ended up liking it the most out of all of them. I did not expect to be most compatible with Phoebe's literary choices. Now, what she says about this book in a One Grand article is, don't judge a book by its plot. It's the story of a girl who has a crush at school, but the writing is better than Salinger. Now, personally, I've read a Salinger book. It was Franny and Zoe. I didn't like it. So really anyone's writing is better than Salinger. However, she's right. Don't judge a book by its cover. I judged this book by its cover in a positive sense many years ago when I added it to my list, but I never really got around to reading it, and I'm glad that I finally did. So shout outs Phoebe if you're watching this. Thank you for making me read this book, because I had a really good time with it. It had a lot of themes of like growing up and the complexities of being in first year university and living on your own for the first time and dealing with all kinds of new personalities and having to kind of shift your perception of the world. And I thought the main character was hilarious and very relatable. I don't think she was trying to be hilarious, but it is what it is. And honestly, like her whole relationship with this guy, Ivan, like their whole friendship was just so intriguing to follow. Like I just had so much fun reading about them, and I was so excited to pick up the book and see what's happening next. It borrows a lot of Russian themes. It talks a lot about Russian literature and the great Russian writers, because Selin is in a Russian language class. So yes, the title is borrowed from The Idiot. However, as far as I understand the plot for The Idiot by Dostoevsky, these share no plot points. There is no Ivan and Selin that email each other in Dostoevsky's novel, which kind of a loss for him, I guess. I know a lot of people are wary to pick this up because of the fact that they're like email correspondences, but it's not solely emails, and a lot of the time she's just kind of explaining what Ivan says in his emails or what she says in her emails. It's not like just blocks and blocks of emails that you have to trudge through. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I liked this book the most out of the three valid contenders because I don't count Night Bitch. And yeah, that's that. I'll give you an update later once I've had the chance to sit with this book and think about it a little longer, and I'll do like a wrap up of all the books and what I thought overall and how I liked this challenge. Alright folks, the time has come to wrap up this video. I finished reading the boygenius recommendations. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. It's been quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading more of their recommendations. I felt like there was quite a variety in all the books that I read. One of them was a nonfiction, which was the Baldwin book, and then there was the book about a religious cult, and the book about motherhood, and The Idiot, which was all about growing up and youth and not knowing what's going on. And I think it's really interesting to see how I meshed with each of their styles. Of course, I've only read one book each and then one collective recommendation, but I was surprised to find that I liked Phoebe's book the most. She had the least options to pick from. A lot of them were either books I wasn't interested in or books I've already read. I think she only had like 10 options. So I picked The Idiot, and I was wary at first, as I had mentioned. But I actually ended up really liking it. It was my favorite of the 4 that I've read. It motivated me to start reading Either Or by Elif Boutman, which I'm currently working through, and which was another boygenius book club book. So there we go. So Night Bitch was the only one of the 4 that I ended up disliking. The other 3, I liked them. I enjoyed reading them all for different reasons. I thought they were good for different reasons. Night Bitch, I was excited about, and I liked it at first, but it like fell flat completely for me. As I said, I think it would have been better as a short story. Sorry if you love the book. There are so many more recommendations from Julian and from Lucy that I'm really looking forward to reading. I think they both have a very interesting taste in literature, and they both read quite widely. It would be interesting to see whose taste I fit with more similarly after reading a couple more books, because right now it's just The Incendiaries and The Fire Next Time, and those are not really comparable, although they do both follow themes of religion. And then they all have quite broad tastes. I wouldn't say that any of them gravitate towards something specific just from the titles that I've read through. It seems that other than Phoebe, I only say this because there are so few books and a lot of them are children's books, they have a taste for like complex books thematically, which is interesting. I know that they're both big readers and they both take a lot from what they read, and you can tell from their lyrics that there are people that love to consume words and to consume other people's stories. I do understand the hype for The Idiot well now, especially while reading Either Or. I feel like I have more of a perspective on the book now, although I do understand the criticisms for it. I was surprised about the criticisms for The Incendiaries. I did not expect it to be so poorly received as it was. People hate this book, apparently. And then, of course, James Baldwin's book, it's very highly rated. And then The Night Bitch, we just won't even talk about that. That's it, that's all. Those are my final thoughts on this journey. It's been a fun one. And also crying to their most recent music releases. The album is coming out shortly. This video will be out right after the album. Yeah, that's it, that's all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like this video if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.